Hey there folks, what I want to show you today is how to forge a pair of tongs to hold 20 mil square or 20 mil round with, and I want to basically use these pair of tongs to forge chisels and punches and stuff like that from 20 mil round, and for instance square drifts from 20 mil square. Uh, and because I need to have those pieces, those short pieces flat on the anvil, I can't have those English bolt jar tongs, because then the arc would be in the way and I couldn't get low enough with the angle. And I'm still missing a pair of these tongs. And what I want to cover in that tutorial are some of the major mistakes that I see most people do with their tongs. So those are really the most common mistakes, and I've never seen anybody really talking about it in any video I've seen. And the first mistake is that people go too far too fast on this part, or too far too fast on this part. So the tongs are getting too thin here or too thin here. The structure of a pair of tongs is, this is either a taper or a bar or anything else that you can imagine of, for example like this. And then your boss is a bar this way and a bar this way, so there's no taper in your boss. I mean, I keep doing that wrong too. You can see it here a little bit, but you see some pretty heavy examples of how that can turn out. And then you have a taper here leading into a bar. So what I mean with a taper is that it either gets thinner or thicker, and a bar is that it has equal thickness. So that's the structure of a tong. The jaws can be however they need to be, and then you have a bar this way, you have a taper this way and also slightly this way, and here a bar. And I want to show you some early examples of tongs that I made. For example, this one here, you can see horrible structure here. This is going to eventually crack someday. Yeah, this is one of the worst I ever made. So you can see way too thin here. There's no structural support. Okay, this is a really bad example. But those tongs actually worked. But you also see here. And those are the two best tongs I've made yet. So you can see the structure here. Taper leading into a bar. And the same on these scrolling tongs here. The way the reins should look like. The reason why people keep doing it wrong is because they think about the pair of tongs as a thing that is built up in steps, like from steps. They first they forge the jaws, and then they forge the rein, and then they forge the boss, and then they forge the reins. And actually, what happens is that they keep adding up minor mistakes, like making this too thin, and then they try to compensate. And if I'm getting this too thin and I'm trying to compensate with making the boss even thinner, this happens, and you're ending up with a crappy pair of tongs. And also, they go too far here, and what happens is it looks like that, structurally very weak. And you know, then people start to forge the reins and the reins and the reins, and those weak spots are always getting shattered and shattered and shattered, and when they are done with the reins, they break off. And that's very frustrating. I experienced that too often in my life to make the mistake again. So you have to think about a pair of tongs more like a sculpture that you're building up progressively. So you're first dividing up the material, like you're taking the clay and building up the head and the neck, and then you're starting to form a little bit more detail, and then you're working on another part, and then you're making the nose. You're not starting with the nose or whatever. You're building it up progressively, and that's the same way you have to forge many pieces of forged stuff. Actually work more like you're building up a sculpture, or you're building you're you're making a painting, so you start with an outline, and then you're starting to add detail and colors and all like that. And that's the same way you have to think about tongs. So what we're gonna do, I actually made a practice piece earlier here. This is already too far for a blank, so on a blank you would just have the material divided up roughly and then refine it a little bit more. Then we make the reins, then we come back, then we cut it off, make the second half, blend it in, and then cut it in the middle, so we won't need tongs to make tongs. So if you're building up your shop from scratch, you only need an anvil, a fire, some sort of swage. I have a little swage block. You can maybe use a part of your anvil or a vise, for example. I'm going to show you how to use a vise also to make this bend. A piece of square bar, whatever you want to hold with it. A round punch. I am having this cone here. You can use a flat punch, but I suggest using one with a little cone on top. And a hammer. I'm going to use my 2 kilo rounding hammer. I would not recommend any hammer under 3.5 pounds. Now some people might say, well, I was in the shop of a master and there was no hammer lighter than 2 pounds and 800 grams. You have to think about the work that these people are doing. I bet they are doing wrought iron work, so what they do is take flat bar and hammer it into pretty shapes in scrolls or whatever. Or they use machinery mainly and only use their hammer for smaller things. And if they have to do bigger things, they use a striker or they use a power hammer. Do you see a striker here, or do you see a power hammer? If yes, please please go ahead and give me that stuff you smoked in the morning, because I want that stuff too. I'm having to draw out these reins on my own, and that's why I'm using a heavier hammer. You have to have that inertia to move this bigger stock here. It's like trying to cut down a redwood tree with a belt axe. It's, you know, you're using a big felling axe, but you would also not use a big felling axe on making a bowl or anything like that. You would use your belt axe, and that's the same thing with hammers and blacksmithing. Basically, you need to use a hammer on scale. So 4.25 pounds is pretty much ideal for drawing out this large stock here. Oh well, I will light my fire up again, and now we'll show my anvil. Take a nice high heat, near edge of the anvil, a square piece, 1, 2, 3, then turn it left and angle it at 45 degrees. 1, make sure you're not moving too much, 2, 3, then another, about a square piece, turn left again, 1, 2, 3. Now you're coming to the near side of the anvil. You're forging start and stop. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, now I can hit that down, and I can start over again. Now I can switch to my flat face and chop with the corner. So I'm obviously going very slow on this. Okay, now this is too cold. But you see, I'm starting to divide up my material. Next heat I'm going to refine this all. I was going very, very slow. Usually you should be a little bit further in one heat here. But this just so you can see what you're doing. Obviously you can go way faster on this. Angle your hammer Now with the round die, and this is very important. Your near side, doing this here, starts your shape, the taper of your tapered part of the reins. Now you can swoop this. Now it's starting to look like a pair of tongs, like a half of a tong already, just a little bit. Put down. You see, by dividing my material up first and then refining it, I was able to keep this part here nice and thick, and by coming to the near side and hitting here and here, so you can see I have it flat on my anvil. I'm not having it like this, having a gap or something like that, that would twist it and stuff. So here and here, starting that backwards taper. And here you're only with your flat die and an angled hammer coming in like this. And here I'm also angling my hammer here, not hitting here too much, because then my boss is going to be tapered in that direction and I don't want that. Next heat. Now I'm drawing out the reins over the edge of the anvil, turning every hit, first roughing it out, see how much material this moves and how the heat is kept in the piece of the material. So now your transition here, you can first now come to the near side and start to get your taper into the right direction, because now you see the taper is this way, and you want to be this way and then into a bar. So what you do is here, unless you're free, you come in like this and chop with your hammer, and then here you can come to the near side and work like this onto the anvil. Then go back, work like this, hitting this way pushes the material this way, hitting this way pushes the material this way. That's how you build up the structure of your taper. Next heat. So now I'm coming on the anvil. Oh wait, first going to work on this transition. So now I'm working on the anvil, thing like this and this, chopping. Then I can come to the near side and start to work like this. You can also come on the horn for this job. It is easier for you, especially if you don't have a rounding hammer, which you can tilt so nicely. And then we continue here. This. And like that. Go a little bit thinner here now. Can hit twice here, so I'm keeping the rectangle, staying away from my boss. Now I can gain some more length here. Okay, now I gained some length here, and what I want to do now is come back to my actual tong and take this down a little bit more. You see it's still very, very thick, and blend this in. So I'm now using the edge of my hammer to spread this. I'm using it like a cross peen. Push the material into the direction I want it to be. Now I did a little bit more work on this. So next, putting it like this, hammering here, so I'm freeing the boss from my draw material. This saves me a lot of filing and grinding later, hopefully. Okay, this is getting too cold. Now I am again coming in at an angle. And this is important now, getting this again thinner than the boss. Because I just thinned out my boss this way. Now I have to go this way tilted, so I'm keeping my structure. Okay, apparently this needs to be getting thinner but at a higher heat. Also adjust it. you can do now is come in here and open that up more. Make sure to keep it moving while you're doing this. Vanish. Lightly, don't over exaggerate this here now, because otherwise your boss is going to get too thin. Clean that up again. Now you can take off the corners. This will also prevent it from stress cracking while we are working on the rest of the pair. No, this way. And come in here. Take these corners. Take these corners. Take these off. Take some off here. Here. Maybe even come in like this. So you're nowhere having any corners that are too sharp, so it won't crack so easily. Okay, this is as far as I'm going to go. Oh hell, the camera. Wait a second. Okay, this is as far as I'm gonna go with here before I'm going to continue working here. Okay, now I'm taking more material for the second half. Bar it up again, near side. Okay. So what I want to do now is go ahead and round this up a little bit before I'm going to cut it off and make the other half. Taking my flat for the far side and hitting the diagonals, and every nick that is put in will be taken out on the anvil. You see? Creating a nick, taking it out. Creating one, taking it out at the same time. That's the way it goes. Now I'm getting into my taper. can blend this in now. It starts to go from octagonal to round. A little bit more heat. Come back on it. So now I want to show you what is called forging a unicorn hornet. That's basically just what it's called like, because you're going round and around with continuous blows, and there's going to be a pattern showing up on your steel that looks just like the horn of a unicorn. So you're 2/3 on the anvil, 2/3 off the anvil, turning the material slowly, and that is doing both, reducing the material just a little bit and creating a form, round form in that case. I can do the same thing on the near side of the anvil if I see that my structure isn't right. So if it's thicker back here than it is front, I can do the same here without roughing it up too much, taking away some dimension. Okay, now I'll start over here and round up the rest, and then I will cut it off, make the other half, blend it all in, and then we are almost done. You can also do this rough first, so you use all your heat to really change the shape, and then you can use the rest of the heat to refine it. And here you can see I still have a lot of spots being bigger or smaller than the others, and that's where the unicorn technique really helps you to blend it in. Don't do this at too low of a heat. I can see that this portion here is pretty thick still, so I can also go ahead and come here and bar this up. Okay, the rest I can do later. Wait, this little fella here. Alright. Leave enough unforged material here so you can make the other half. Make a clean cut to the center. Going all the way around. If you don't have a good hot cut, I would rather suggest you to use an angle grinder to cut it off, or a saw, and not mess up your workpiece by a crappy cut now. So I still have about 1.5 inches, 40 millimeters to forge my other half out of without having any forged stuff in the way. Same thing on this side here. Wait. Now. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Near side down. Okay, now I have my initial taper here, the same as here. So what I'm gonna do now is blend this in. If I would just start to tape it in, the taper would run this way, and you don't want it to run this way, you want it to run this way. So this is starting to look nice. I can now work on my blank a little bit more and then finish up the reins. So now, as you can see, I got both halves in one piece. I did not at all at any time need a pair of tongs to forge this. So what I'm going to do now is find the middle here, cut it in half, then do some minor adjustments, and then we are going to make the jaws, then we're going to punch the holes, assemble them, pre-assemble them, then make everything fit, rivet them, we're going to be done. So we got an overall length from boss to boss of 56 centimeters, 560 millimeters. That is about 2 feet. I like my tongs to rather have a little bit shorter range. I don't like them to be horribly long. So 56, 25 plus 3, 28. That's the middle. I'm going to mark this. Okay, now you need some sort of bottom swage and the material. This is a little bit tricky. Place it in the middle. Can take several heats for that. Give one blow, see if you're in the middle. Correct if necessary. It's good. Take a second heat on that. So now you can also use a vise for that, especially if you're a little bit off. You can correct. Now that's better. You can also twist that now. Here's my wrench. Wrench here. Looks good to me. Okay, the rest can be done while it's assembled. So now, before I go ahead and punch and assemble them, I'm going to do two things. First of all, I'm going to make little stops for your, how's it called, tong clips. And I'm going to make an offset, like on this pair. So your reins are both the same level. I like that, it's nice to work with. So the way we are going to do that is, so now let me think. Was like this. So you're going to hammer it this way. Dum dum dum. Ah, you can't see. Wait a second. Yeah, we're going to hammer it this way, over the edge. I'm laying it over the far edge of the anvil with my boss up. Ah, you can't see it, right? Up. Yeah. I'm hitting down once, I'm tilting it, and I'm tilting it again. And now I can go round and around. isolates that little blob for you. It's going to keep your tong clip in place. Tidy up the edge. Nice. Same thing with the other half. I will now punch the holes. I mark them at a black heat. This is not cold, it's just not glowing anymore. The nice thing about these punches where the cone is that you can also use them as a center punch. So now, giving it a very light tap and see if that is centered. Looks good to me. Another one, now deeper. It can go over to this side a little bit more. Stupid. Yes, now I have a nice mark. Still intact, as you can see. Can you see it? Yes, you can. Now I'll heat it up and punch it hot. Okay. Now I can already feel for the hole. Hit once, take it off of the material, let the heat wick back into the hole. If it's stuck, just give it a little tap on the rein and it's going to come out easily. So now, going to planish it. I have my shine here. Now that should immediately sink into the already made hole. Now I can drive it. It's coming out. Over the round hole and knock it out. Not quite yet. Let's just stack a little bit. Now it's out. Can clean that up again if I want to. Okay, now the offset. I'm putting it with the jaw facing up, the 45-degree angle over the round edge, taking a cross peen and hammering it down. Now you can straighten that back out, for example over the square horn, not just here or this way. Yeah, this way actually works quite well. And now you created that offset. This is actually too much, so I'm putting that back a little bit. Same thing with the other half, and now it's very important that you're doing it at the same spot. So now now it's riveted together. Didn't go as smoothly as I hoped with the rivet, but it's fine. So now, while this is stuck, I can adjust this and that. Now I'll have to heat that up to make it move. So now I did adjust them. Make sure everything is right. And now I can actually put on my touch mark. Drop this. Where is it? To put it on the rivet. Now I suggest you give that thing a good overall brush.
Now use an oil rag dampened in peanut oil or another heat-resistant vegetable oil and cover it. Make a nice surface treatment. It's going to blacken it and going to protect it from rust. And it feels nice in the hands. So put a drop of oil into the rivet. It's going to be working very smoothly. Alright, I reckon I'll be able to sleep with a good conscience tonight. Made a pair of tongs that certainly satisfies me. I hope you learned a lot, and we are going to see us in the next video. Bye!